Shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid?
Stunning to monitor the media's lack of interest in the whole Maui story. I've been in this business for 30 years. I'm stunned, but I'm not surprised. The incident seems to be the story here, right? But the true story, the media knows it is not allowed to tell. Is it a coincidence that the Maui police chief is the same man who was in charge in Las Vegas during that massacre that killed 58 people? Is it a coincidence that the Maui property, owned by million and billionaires, it wasn't touched by the flames while homes of the locals all burned?
What she fails to also mention is how the media hasn't even once interviewed a grieving parent. Not a single parent looking for their children. Not a single interview with a child. Not a single interview with the schools.
Was it a coincidence that the largest system of outdoor emergency sirens in the world never made a sound as the fire devoured Lahaina? Was it a coincidence that at the same time, very same time, all the water was turned off? Was it a coincidence that police were ordered to block off streets and to funnel all the cars trying to escape? Think about this coincidence. That governor also signed an emergency proclamation on July 17th, 3 weeks before the fire, about housing of all things. Is it a coincidence that the government put up a black fence around Lahaina, or that the FAA grounded all drones from flying over the affected areas? Is it a coincidence that since at least 2011 there have been plans to make Maui the first smart city run by 100% renewable energy? And that it must be a coincidence then that the locals whose homes did not burn are now being evicted from their property. And of course, a total coincidence that all the fact checkers who are checking these facts, who say everything I just told you is just a coincidence, are also owned and run by BlackRock.
If anyone is wondering why the direct energy blast to Maui didn't affect anything that was blue or white, take a look at these pictures. If you were in control, would you want the people that you're sending in to take over to be injured? If you notice any of this color blue, all those colors of blue, totally ignored by the fires and the direct energy blast. You guys have started to see the blues and the clues. Those are the shades that aren't affected by direct energy. It's at 666.2 terahertz. Defeats lasers.
There was that ant that stood up to me.
Yeah, but we can forget about him.
Yeah, it was just one ant. One ant.
Yeah, you're right. It's just one ant.
Yeah, boys, they're puny.
Puny? Say, let's pretend this grain is a puny little ant. Did that hurt?
Nope.
Well, how about this one? Are you kidding? How about this?
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line.
A piece of dirt.
No, I'm wrong. You're lower than dirt. You're an ant. Let this be a lesson to all you ants. Ideas are very dangerous things.
You are mindless, soil-shopping losers, put on this earth to serve us.
You're wrong, Hopper. Ants are not meant to serve grasshoppers. I've seen these ants do great things. And year after year, they somehow manage to pick food for themselves and you. So who is the weaker species? Ants don't serve grasshoppers. It's you who need us. Not stronger than you say we are. And you know it, don't you?
Well,
nonsense.
Hopper, I hate to interrupt, but, you ants stay back! Oh, this was such a bad idea.
You see, Hopper, nature has a certain order. The ants pick the food, the ants keep the food, and the grasshoppers leave.
There's more crime during a full moon. There are more car accidents. Sensitivity to pain is higher during a full moon. A full moon disrupts our sleep. Some people are prone to erratic behavior during a full moon. This is called the werewolf effect. This is also where the word lunatic comes from. Talk to a cop or a nurse. They'll tell you that they can tell when it's getting close to a full moon. Again, science tries to explain this erratic behavior.
Given that this word was named after people started exhibiting erratic behavior closer to a full moon, it is weird that somehow mainstream science is trying to debunk this and say it's just nonsense given that it was such a prominent problem back then that it deserved its own word.
Like there's more crime during a full moon because it's easier to see.
No, it's also easier to get caught.
Right, the science is thin. And notice that all these changes in behavior during a full moon are negative. More crime, more pain, more car crashes. If there are aliens feeding off our negative emotions and they use the moon to do it, well, suddenly everything makes sense. But there is good news. You can fight back.
Collected about 3/4 of that little canister full of this dried blood. We had this analyzed and at body temperature, and we swirled this gently for 72 hours. When we put this in a growth medium for another 72 hours and put it under a microscope, the white blood cells were dividing.
And what is even more astonishing is the fact they were even able to acquire the blood of Jesus, and how it's still viable to have tests run on it.
We were able to get a chromosome count. There were 24 chromosomes. 23 Christ got from Mary. He got one, which was the sex determinant, or the Y, from his heavenly Father, for a total of 24. All of us have 46. We get 23 from our mother and 23 from our father. Now, this blood, folks, was still alive after almost 2,000 years. People that did the test thought I had pulled a fast one of some kind on them. Never in their lives have they ever seen any dried blood that was still alive.
Poor straw man. He was born the same day you were. He looks like you, has the same name, and lives in your house, but you never knew he existed. You will have even paid his parking tickets or taxes. The worst part? He's been dead from day one. From every birth certificate, a legal personality, or legal fiction, is created with the same name to confuse little old you into thinking it's you. So, there is a human you and a paper you, or as it's commonly known, a straw man. So when it seems like government officials, court clerks, or the police are speaking English, they aren't. They're speaking legalese, designed to make you agree to verbal and written contracts without even knowing about it, all spun from Black's Law Dictionary. For example, when the police say, "Do you understand?" you'll say, "Yes." What they are really saying is, "Do you stand under our authority?" Oops-a-daisy, you just created a verbal contract with them. Oh, you clever government. Did you know that whenever you register something, you are handing over title to the person you register it with? That's right. Whenever you register something with the government, they assume it belongs to them. Registered your car? Super! Now you are the registered keeper of your vehicle, and the government can crush it when you don't pay your, straw man's taxes. Expecting a new bundle of joy? Well then you need to register your little darling with a birth certificate. Then they can start the process all over again and create a new straw man for your little one. Isn't that great? So when Junior grows up, he'll be able to generate revenue just like you have. When you notify on your baby by signing the birth certificate, your child becomes a ward of state. And if the government doesn't like what you're doing, they'll assume it's okay to take the child away or make new rules for things they don't like. Not enough school? Smacking your child? Shouting too loudly? Then it's off to social services for the little one. When you get a bill, it's sent to you but belongs to your straw man, not you. That's why bills, fines, and summons start with Mr., Mrs., or Ms. Sometimes you'll see your surname in capitals, just like on a gravestone. That's because your straw man is dead and just a silly piece of paper, created before you could comprehend or even consent to it. When you go to court, you represent your straw man, so you, the human, take on any costs, fees, taxes, and fines involved for the straw man. The human you doesn't even need to pay them. But you made a contract with the court by appearing on behalf of your legal personality or straw man, just like the government knew you would. Confused? Well, don't worry. The government doesn't want you to know anyway. If you knew, you'd stop paying things like council tax and parking tickets. Because when you go to court, you are representing your straw man. You are you, alive and made of flesh and blood. Your straw man, or legal personality, is a piece of paper created from your birth certificate. And you think it's you. What a silly Billy.
Well, it looks like the people that dominate our financial system and control the money are the same people who currently dominate the government, who are shaping society, who are controlling academia. They've effectively taken over the airwaves. And so they can make something that's utterly ridiculous, like this war in Ukraine, and portray it as though it's some victory for them and for their ruling class, when in fact we know the Ukrainians have been slaughtered in this war. We've set them up for failure. We tried to build an army on the fly. We sent them into action, promising them virtually everything and anything, and they've reached the point now where they have nothing left to fight with. And so now we're handing them cruise missiles, and they're going to hurl those pointlessly at targets in Russia or wherever they can reach. It's not going to change anything, but it could ultimately induce the Russians to finally say, let's attack and end this thing once and for all. Russian commanders are telling President Putin they want to drive their tanks right into Kiev and destroy this regime once and for all, which they now view, and I think they're right, as a danger not only to them, but a danger to the people living in Ukraine and living in Europe. These people are dangerous. They represent everything that you're talking about. They have a spokesperson who is a man dressed as a woman. Whether or not this person has been through some sort of transgender surgery, I have no idea. But this thing spouts utter nonsense and is held up as an example by Zelensky in the West as something we all ought to worship. This has got to stop. This doesn't make any sense. It's the nonsense machine in charge. We've turned the world upside down. I don't have any easy answers other than to say we've got to resist. I know my ancestors resisted a hell of a lot in Scotland over many centuries. And I suppose that's why I'm sitting where I am in the United States now, because they finally decided to give up and leave. But I hope that the people in Great Britain will resist and stand up and essentially talk about the nonsense and stop it. Because we've got to. We've been lied to about everything. We're being lied to about gender and biology and genetics, lied about what's right, what's wrong. And we don't need PhDs, and we don't need to spend time in seminaries to figure out what's right, what's wrong, and what's real.
One last question. I read a Washington Times article many years ago where you had a comment about the organization, and then now it's been in the Wall Street Journal, it's been in a lot of different newspapers, and that's the Bohemian Grove. And back in, 1996, when you joined as a Clinton advisor, the Republicans were criticizing you, oh, what about Bohemian Grove? And then you countered them by saying, hey, I don't run around in the woods naked. What did that mean?
I don't know what quote you're referring to. I'm not aware of any quote like that. Listen, I am a happy member of the Bohemian Grove. I like the folks who come there.
Have you been there for the ceremony with the cremation of care?
Frankly, I don't think that's something I need to talk to you about.
What the heck was happening there? This person is someone in position, and from what it looks like, it seems he's not the only government personnel attending.
Well, I'm Alex Jones, and I snuck in there in 2000. I'm the guy that blew it wide open and got the video. It's been on national TV.
Well, I disrespect you for that.
You do?
I do.
But it's a lot of big public officials going in there. Don't we deserve to know?
You took an, I don't know anything about you, and I don't know anything about your film, but if you go in there with an understanding, you violated that understanding by releasing that film, and I don't respect you for that.
What about the ritual? Is the ritual genuinely?
Sir, everything. I don't owe you this comment.
I know. I appreciate it.
This is what's called ambush journalism, and I disrespect you for that as well. So thank you and goodbye.
Been in the ritual?
It's none of your damn business.
Oh.
The most evil, vicious Navy bases in the history of the planet. They do stuff that would make like Santa Claus. Diego Garcia.
So
wait.
Sorry.
Diego Garcia. That's where that first Malaysian plane is. That's where it landed. It had 4 scientists on it. Huh? 20 scientists, but 4 had filed for patents. It was Malaysia, but they worked out of Austin, Texas for Texas Instruments. Right. And the ones behind that plane was Texas Instruments, the government, and Boeing, who made the plane. And everybody is stupid enough to believe that a plane almost a block long can just disappear. With the electronics we have, all the technology we have, the next generation of cars will come out, there'll be no driver. So we got 4 of those top scientists that had filed for patents worth $400 billion. So if 1, 2, 3 of us and your brother, 4, we filed for patents. And then here's a friend of yours who's with us. So 5 of us filed for patents. If we die before the patent is granted, then your brother, who wasn't on the plane with us, he owns them all. So those 4 scientists, and the 5th person was the Carlyle Group. They own them all now. The patent was granted 3 days after the plane was missing.
Wow.
Okay, and so what I'm saying is, this is the game, and if you can't follow that thread, then you don't.
Crazy.
What were the patents for?
Huh?
What were the patents for?
Well, the patents was, you heard people talk about they're gonna one day inject you and can control you. Well, these guys come up with something, they don't have to inject you. They're just put in this room and you come in and you smell it. Okay. And that's why they killed them. They might have not killed them. They might just let them sit there and die.
I never get my
You know how everybody believes that BlackRock is the most corrupt company in the entire world? Well, what if I told you there are families with much darker secrets? Well, it's time I teach you about the Wallenberg family and how they shaped Sweden's economy, but more importantly own companies like Ericsson, which controls all of the telecommunications across the globe,
In
which you may have heard of.
2009, a company called Ericsson
came under U.S. pressure for selling telecom equipment to several oppressive governments, including Sudan, Syria, and Iran. Some of these regimes use those technologies to monitor and control their own people. During that time, Erickson sponsored a speech by Bill Clinton, paying him $750,000, his highest paying speech. In April 2012, the Obama administration issued an executive order imposing sanctions on telecom sales to Iran and Syria, but those sanctions did not cover Erickson's work in Iran.
Yeah, like Trump or not, he spoke the truth about this shit, and everybody's been covering this up ever since. I mean, just let me know in the comments how many of you have even ever heard of Erickson, let alone the Wallenberg family. Now, there's a lot to this family, and there's a lot of history dating back all the way to the World War. So if you want me to make a video on the corruption around their banks and how they took over Sweden and the entire Europe continent, let me know. But we're going to be focusing on their investor branch and how they own Ericsson. So what is Ericsson? Ericsson is the leader in real-time changing with more than 184 implementations of managing more than 2.3 billion end users, people, worldwide. They own and control all of the infrastructure for all of your telecoms for things like 5G, your Internet of Things. They control all of it and have the off and on switch. Now, how this family obtained Ericsson is crazy. This guy, Ivar Kruger, apparently unalived himself after a funeral of one of his friends and stakeholders in the Ericsson company back in like the 1930s. What's then by sheer coincidence, the Wallenberg family, the day after his death, the Wallenberg family illegally with false balance sheets took over all of Ivar's assets. This then gave the Wallenberg family complete monopoly over the entire telecom industry, because they also had ties to the crypto AG, which is jointly owned by the American CIA, all the way up until just 2018. This means if the CIA ever wanted to pay them enough money, they could theoretically shut down any country's telecoms at the snap of a finger. Shut down the internet, entire economies would collapse. That is the power that this family has. Remember this picture I showed you in the beginning of this video? They just got a slap on the wrist for $1 billion by the government because they were doing foreign corrupt practices. Because this family to this day bribes and owns governments. Follow if you want to learn more.